Hey guys, this is Josh from the Grapplezilla podcast. And today I am so lucky to have, in my opinion, one of the best upcoming MMA fighters coming on to, not, I wouldn't even say coming onto the scene, but that everyone should be worried about because he's the real deal. His name is Kyven Gadson. Okay. Now, if you, I'll give you a bit of example of this episode. If you study the biomechanics of wrestling, you're probably already familiar with today's guest, okay? In the 2015 NCAA finals, he executed what is arguably the most perfectly timed over-under lat drop in modern collegiate history against an opponent who seemed utterly immovable, okay? But that moment was just one data point in a career built on structural dominance. You know, Kevin's pedigree is undeniable. He's a NCAA Division I national champion out of the great Iowa State, a multiple-time U.S. national team member, and a Final X competitor who has tested his freestyle mechanics against the best in the world. He comes from a deep wrestling lineage, having been shaped by the late, legendary Willie Gadson. But what makes Kevin's current trajectory so fascinating in his transition, he is now applying his elite understanding of positional geometry, leverage, and base of support to the cage as an undefeated professional mixed martial arts fighter, competing at the heavyweight division. Now, training out of the notoriously aggressive pedigree submission fighting system for his grappling, better known as Daisy Fresh, through an affiliate of theirs. Kyven is blending world-class takedowns with a rapidly evolving submission game, already securing multiple wins by Kimura. We're going to get into the weeds today, guys. We'll be breaking down the mechanics of the overhook, how the physics of a scramble change when you add strikes, and what it takes to re-engineer an elite wrestling base for the cage. He's an absolute technician on the mat and a truly rising force in MMA. Please welcome to Grapplezilla podcast, Kyven Gadson. Kyven, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I appreciate the mid-match adaptations. You're calling me Kevin at first, and then you switched it. So I appreciate that correction, mid-match adjustments. They're important, and I know they're going to be super important in fighting for me too.
Totally. And by the way, it's not you, it's me, because I actually have the IQ sometimes of a mushroom. So that was one of the times. So everything is good. So, Kyven, you know, I want to ask you how, like in my intro, let's say I covered a lot, but let me know your origin story. So how did you get into all this?
The wrestling or the mixed martial arts?
The wrestling and then the MMA.
Yeah, so the wrestling, I come from just a family that wrestled. My dad wrestled at Iowa State University. He also was a JUCO national champion at Nassau Community College out in New York, undefeated, two-time JUCO national champion. And then my uncle wrestled at Iowa State too. Both my dad and my uncle were all Americans. My dad being a third place finisher and a sixth place finisher, and then my uncle being a third place finisher at the NCAA Division I tournament. And so I got started in wrestling really early. I think my first true practice was with my dad in our living room, and then but before that, though, he was the head coach, Division I head coach at Eastern Michigan University. So I got stories of the guys telling me like there was times where I ran on the mats during a duel, and all those different things. So I had all the energy to be on the mats, be around it. Born in Iowa City, spent time in the Iowa wrestling room from the 90s to the early 2000s, and then moved to Waterloo, where that lineage, that wrestling lineage grows. I think there's 13 Division I NCAA champions from Waterloo high schools, with me currently being the most previous. And then went on to Iowa State and wrestled for Team USA. And then after that, stepped away from wrestling in 2022, and was just going into the Myriad American Jiu-Jitsu here in Ames, Iowa, which was founded by Jake Bauer. and just was like, all right, I'm just gonna do some rolling, learn some jujitsu, and started doing the jujitsu and working on the guys with their wrestling. And then we had a couple guys that wanted to fight, so we had some guys working on their striking. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. And so just started trying to pick things up. And then, October of last year, had my first pro fight after having my first fight, which was one amateur fight in June. And so, like, in the last, what do you call it, 14 months, have had 5 fights. And then I guess if you look at it that way, in the next 15 after I fight in September, it'll be 6 fights in about 15 months. And so want to really be active, but I've had a great access to like fighters, and one of my high school coaches was Mike Van Arsdale, who was also NCAA champ for Iowa State, and he was a UFC veteran. And so I remember him giving me like rash guards, ultimate fighter rash guards when I was in high school, and basically kind of like mapping out this plan, like, hey, Kyven, you're gonna win your state titles, you're gonna go to Iowa State, win your NCAA titles, and then go make your world and Olympic teams and go win that, and then you're gonna go into mixed martial arts. And I think at some point during that, I kind of lost parts of the mixed martial arts, and here we are, I guess, finding it.
Absolutely. Listen, you have such a pedigree, as well as you've also had the privilege. I wouldn't say privilege, but the experience of training under the great Kyven Gadson. How was that?
Definitely a privilege. I would be locked in with that comment, of a privilege for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I think about it like this. The space of college athletics is changing, right? So now you got NIL, all those different things that kind of change the fundamental, maybe, nature or balance of relationships and coach athlete relationships, all those different things. It's more of maybe business relationships now. uh, and I was talking to somebody yesterday about how that kind of shifts things. But I was just in Colorado um, recently for the wedding of one of Kevin Jackson's daughters. And so when I think about relationships and transformational relationships, being able to train under KJ was an absolute, like, amazing, privilege. But just being able to have that strong relationship with him still, 10, 15, 16 years after I decided I was going to wrestle for him in college, is something that I appreciate even more. But wrestling for him, there was a standard that he expected. He expected you to meet, and he wasn't going to shy away from those tough conversations or that accountability if you weren't adhering to that standard. And I know one thing that he did. He would always let you know where you were at. He's like, I can't guarantee that you're going to win, but I know who's going to compete based off how they're preparing. And so I remember sitting in my living room before deciding to commit to Kevin Jackson, and him saying, hey, if you come wrestle for me at Iowa State, you'll get a bachelor's degree, you'll get a master's degree. You'll, win NCAA titles, and you'll compete for world and Olympic titles. And it was like this 6-year plan, in 2000, from 2010 to 2016. And staying there, wrestling for him. In 2014, I earned my Iowa State bachelor's degree. In 2015, I won an NCAA title. In 2017, I got my master's degree. And from 2015 until 2022, I wrestled and competed on Team USA. I didn't win the World or Olympic championships, but I was a multiple-time world team um, alternate. Won the World Cup, um, and had that experience. And so all I can say is, for me, he was a man of his word, and I appreciate all the energy and effort he and his family poured into me.
You know, it's an absolute treasure, the wealth of knowledge that a guy who Kevin Jackson is and has. But also, you come from a wrestling family, as we spoke. How was it to grow up with a father who was such a good wrestler?
That was there's challenges with it. I think I was more of the kid that was a little bit strong-willed and wanted to do things like my way. And my dad used to tell me, he'd be like, "But what was the free Jack?" Like he'd say that, and I had my fair share of like those butt whoopings, in competition, mostly due to my lack of ability to my lack of coachability at that earlier um, age in my career, and I remember being embarrassed after losing in the state finals as a sophomore, and just coming to him and saying like, I think just being humbled, like sports has a way of doing that to you, especially sports like wrestling and combat sports. But I remember telling him, like, I'll do whatever you tell me to do as long as that never happens to me again. And like once we like locked in that way, the trajectory of my career really, really took off from that point. It's amazing what listening can do, Josh.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a Chinese saying that you have 2 ears and one mouth. Use it in that proportion. And that's
Hmm.
one of the best lessons that I always give it to my son. And I always tell myself that when sometimes but yeah, listening is it's an amazing thing, you know. But you're very technical, okay? Especially like um your base. You can see you have a strong base. Now, you hit one of the most iconic throws in NCAA history against the great Kyle Snyder. Looking at that over under lat drop through a biomechanical lens, what are the precise positional geometries, hit placement, structural base, and leverage points that make that throw so devastating, even against a world class center of gravity such as Kyle had?
I think it was a compilation of things. There's some nuances in there and some variance, I would say, but when you're getting people in the wrestling positions maybe that they don't live in on a consistent basis, um, then I think you can exploit things or you can set traps. And so I think a lot of wrestling mixed martial arts is about being able to set traps or lure people into a sense of comfort and essentially be like a manipulator or like a a narcissist, whatever you want to call it, like as a competitor, it's like, hey, trust me, come over here. Like it's safe here. And then boom, it's not. And so I like to think of it through a lens of like intelligence, thoughtfulness, strategy, and like really going back to something that uh, Coach Jackson said to me, I think our first year in college. Um, he was talking about the difference between an assassin and then a killer. Um, and the way he spoke about it was anybody can kill, like anybody can kill something or kill somebody in the right circumstances. Um, and he's like, I don't want to kill her, right? Like I don't want to kill her. Killing is essentially like unpredictable. It's not thought through. It's not brought with a strategic approach. He said, but an assassin is thoughtful. They have their systems, they have structure, they have the ability to adapt. And they kind of, um, it's not effortless, but it's as smooth as it can be because these things are like well thought out, And so when getting to college and you're being challenged to be all those things, like you got to have that killer in you, but you need to be thoughtful and structural and have your systems, or your science. You're blending the art and science of it all with you. And so I was grateful for that approach, because it wasn't just like, run through this wall for me. You know, you're going to have to run through a wall, right? Or get through a wall or get around the wall. But I want you to be thoughtful about it. Can you dismantle that wall? So when you get past it, um, you're not all broken, beat up, all those different things. Like, is there a more efficient or effective way to to dismantle this opponent? And so in that match specifically, we had saw some things in Kyle's and I's first folk style match from the Cliff King Las Vegas, which would have been December of 2014. We saw some things on film that really gave us comfort that if we saw Kyle again, some of that positioning would show up and we'd be able to exploit it.
And it definitely worked. Your homework paid off there, right? You know,
Yes.
you you also have your overhook is legendary. Okay, on the mat in MMA, the overhook is it's a crucial part, a crucial tool for neutralizing strikes in the clinch. Okay, can you
Mm-hmm.
break down the micro adjustments you make with your overhook to control posture and completely shut down an opponent's offensive base?
Well, I think it starts with um something that was really compromised on me coming into college, which were my shoulders. Like my shoulders, I had a few different injuries and things with that. And so having like a strong shoulder, strong back, strong neck really helped um provide like this um whole system, like that my body was in sync. But like when you're talking about that overhook, even going from elbow, high, to clamping down and getting that elbow more at a, not not all the way 90, but more at like a 45 degrees. So you're keeping pressure on it, pinching it down, and have some ability to navigate that. But those are some of the micro adjustments, just like, where's your hand placed? Um, do they have access to clear out of that underhook? That they have, right? Or do they believe they have an underhook? Because it's one thing to have an underhook, and it's another thing to have the underhook and feel comfortable. Um, and so all those things have to work together to be able to exploit or manipulate the situation.
You know, for those who of you who don't know, Kyven, I apologize. Kyven is he's a big guy. Okay, he's competing at heavyweight in MMA. Now, after spending much of your wrestling career at 197 and 97 kilos, how does the sheer mass of heavyweight opponents change the leverage, force, and structural stability required for your upper body tie-ups?
Oh, it does a lot. It does a lot. Now, um, being at heavyweight, and I would say probably being one of the shorter heavyweights, a lot of film footage goes into watching, the Daniel Cormiers, the Cain Velasquez
Yeah.
type competitors that have that wrestling background and can move through space really well, get to, clinching, dirty boxing. But with that, can use strikes or use grappling wrestling to, mix between the two spaces, right? Where, all right, I'm at range, I close distance, I'm getting into this dirty boxing, situations with overhooks, underhooks, clinch work. So just a lot of film study of people that have done it before me, and then being able to move through the space, close and far, with angles. Because when you don't necessarily want to be wrestling with a 6 foot dude up against the cage, 6 foot, 5 guy up against the cage,
No.
that gives him some support. on his backside. And so just figuring out ways to get to those situations and keep things out in the open has really been a point of awareness that we've been educating ourselves on and putting ourselves in those spaces in the gym.
By the way, watching your fights, like immediately there is definitely you have a Daniel Cormier type of feel when you watch. Like when someone watches you, you do have that, like that power, good base, etc. You know, you were in the World Cup in Yakutsk, and
Yes.
I spend a lot of time analyzing Soviet methodologies and regional styles, like Yakut Hapsagai. That's the one of in the area of Yakutsk. Now, during your international freestyle career, what did you observe about the Russian or Eastern Bloc approach to hand fighting and base disruption that differed most from the American folk style system?
Well, it seems like they're very positionally sound. And when I think about it, it was more like they were going to be as efficient as possible with their energy. Um, and like in I would say American folk style wrestling, I think we do spend a good amount of time working on like the conditioning and cardio. Um, but that was one of the things I think I could have done better from a wrestling lens, is spent maybe a little bit more time on conditioning and cardio, because I think I coming up, it was just like I was going to wrestle really hard. And then I dealt with some injuries that forced an adaptation. And it wasn't that I couldn't wrestle really hard anymore. It was just that I was I wasn't going to be as wild and free maybe as I once was, because of maybe fear of injury, or uh, a career-ending situation. Because I thought my career was over a couple different times due to some injuries, and so just trying to be like, okay, now what can I control? Like, how can I make this favorable to myself? And so the technical part became a lot more maybe important to me that it hadn't been, because of injuries and different things like that. But like the Russians and the Cubans, they seem to um that they have that Eastern European bloc. The Cubans do as well, but they
Yeah.
seem to be very positionally intelligent, and energy effective.
Yeah, I would have to agree. I think your assessment's spot on, you have a very interesting viewpoint that a lot of people don't get to see. Okay. Which is, as someone who competed at the highest levels of both folk style and freestyle, how does the difference in mat wrestling rules, the rule sets, change the physics and momentum of a scramble? Because there is a lot of talk. A lot of people haven't experienced both at the high levels, but you have. What are your opinions on that?
Um, well, like in freestyle, just the inability to expose your back, like in ways that well, in ways folk style's ability to be like, oh, okay, like I can expose my back briefly, um, without giving up control, it can be a saving grace at times. Whereas in freestyle, you don't have that luxury. And so I love how, even though freestyle is my favorite style of wrestling, I love how folk style transitions to mixed martial arts, because I feel like there's a control factor there of, all right, I'm going to pick this person up, put them down, and then I'm going to hold this person down. I think that translation is extremely strong.
I think is a very good point, and I do agree with you. Like freestyle is also my favorite, and I would have to say for the average person, folk style definitely has such a good crossover into MMA, especially when you adjust the striking, of course, but the submission game that adapts to the movement and positioning hierarchy of folk style wrestling. You know,
Yes.
so you've medaled at the World Cup. You got a bronze medal
Yeah.
and wrestled globally. How was encountering so many different international grappling styles prepared you for the unpredictable nature of MMA grappling?
I think we're gonna still find out. That's what I think we're gonna find out how that's translated, because I mean Georgia wrestles different than Russia. Russia wrestles different than Cuba. Uh excuse me.
Let's see.
Um and so it's going to be really interesting because I wouldn't say I came across a ton of people that were um taller taller than me, like in wrestling at 97 kilograms, at 200 and about 14 pounds. But I think at heavyweight in MMA, that's going to be a different situation. I think a lot of my opponents are going to be um, 6 feet to uh 6'7", 6'8", and
Yeah.
being able to adjust and adapt in those spaces is going to be really important. But even just the ability to find the chin, find the cheek, get to collar ties, get to, the body. When you get to the body, getting somebody off the ground and putting them in danger, I think is going to be a very, very key component. When you have somebody worried about where they're going to land, or, someone hasn't been picked up like that since they were, you know, 8 years old or something like that. I think that's a different beast.
Oh, it is. It is, and it's definitely an eye opener, especially when you're getting slammed and controlled from a big boy like you on top.
Yeah.
They're gonna definitely understand that this is real. You know, uh, trans. Getting into more of the MMA conversation. How does the wider stance and the threat of strikes alter your structural base of support? I mean, have you had to completely re-engineer your wrestling posture, or are you finding ways to force your opponents into your preferred wrestling geometry, like your structure, etc.?
I mean, I think it's always you want to put yourself where in the situations like you feel comfortable or you feel good. But there's definitely been there's been some awareness on things that if you bring over from wrestling, folk style wrestling, freestyle wrestling into mixed martial arts, you're going to get yourself hurt. And if you don't bring things over that you need, you're going to be less efficient. And so it's kind of been this whole thing of you got this toolbox. That was an amazing maybe toolbox for this specific project. Now you have a different project that you're putting together and you're figuring out. And so you're like, okay, this tool still works. Maybe it's not my first tool, but I'm gonna put this tool down on this spot, and I'm gonna go purchase these other tools, um, and and just recognizing and having the ability to know when to use which tools, I think is gonna be very, very important of high importance and high priority for me, and I feel really good about what we've been doing right now. I think I have a really solid team around me. When I talk about like the immediate guys, I got my head coach Jerome Ward, who wrestled at Iowa State and was an NCAA qualifier multiple times. Fought um, fought 5 or 6 fights amateur, didn't go pro because of some life things, but has the knowledge, was on the Waco kickboxing team, was a Pan Am silver medalist, so like he gets it. And then you got Mike Rhodes, who's a UFC veteran, trained at Rufus Sport, went to high school with him actually, who's been incredibly supportive, and he's been there. He's been on that stage, and so he kind of knows the business. Not kind of, he knows the business and has really good awareness. And he isn't going to coddle you. And then you got, Ben Cash, who's been extremely, extremely helpful. And then you have some unknown guys and my coach, boxing coaches and Coach Walker and Jet Tunic that have really done a really high level job. I think of just making sure those tools are sharp, and then you have your relationships from the past. Like this past weekend at the wedding, was able to work with my old training partner. That was a big reason why I won an NCAA title. And Duran Wynn, who is also a UFC veteran, trained out at AKA under Daniel Cormier and with Habib and Islam and all those guys. You got Mike Van Arsdale, UFC veteran. So I've been around these guys that have been there and done that. And then in 2026, you have access to, social media. And so one of the coaches that I've really had the opportunity to talk to and kind of gain really solid insight from is Coach Barry Robinson. And so
Oh
really
yeah,
just
he's
appreciative
good.
of man,
He
man. And
is he is an encyclopedia, man.
yes. And so
Love him.
one of my goals is to get over. I wanted to get over there for RIF and and watch the show and train with him. It wasn't able to work this time, but I want to get over to Georgia and train with him in person. But
Georgia in the U.S. Let's just clarify this because I speak a lot about Georgia, the country, in this. In
well, no,
this.
it's Georgia in the country. It's Georgia the country.
Oh, he's at Georgia.
Yes.
He's in
Yeah. Yeah.
Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Barry
Yeah.
Robinson.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I want to get
Oh,
across the pond and get these things solidified. But one of the places I really want to go, I've been out to Kill Cliff and some other places, VSF, Valley VFS, Valley Flow Striking with Mike Valley in Chicago. Been up to
yeah.
Minnesota with some of those UFC guys, Aswind and Thomas Peterson, Lawrence Phillips. They got a really good group up there, La Bodega with Billy Simon. But Corey Anderson over in Indianapolis. So I've been able to go some places and experience some things. But one of the places I really want to get out to is Gilroy with Cormier and just get some more awareness and get some hands-on learning, because I feel like we're closer than we are far away. And
Yeah.
it's at some point you got to jump off the diving board or jump off the cliff and see if you can fly. So
Man, yeah, that's awesome. Another thing that's really interesting is you've already secured multiple wins via Kimura, okay, in your young pro career. Now, you came from an elite wrestling background. We don't, no one's arguing that. How
right.
naturally did the Kimura grip integrate into your arsenal? And do you view it primarily as a submission threat or as a mechanical lever for positional control?
I think I see it as control.
Me too.
And then fatigue starts to play into those different things. And when you're controlling somebody in a space, and most of these guys are the biggest, strongest guys probably in their spaces, and
Yeah.
so you probably haven't maybe been controlled like that. So fatigue, as they say, makes cowards of us all, right? Myself included. I was feeling it this morning. It was one of those mornings where I didn't necessarily want or feel like getting up and doing what I had committed to doing. And I talked, I didn't negotiate that, right? I got up, got to the gym, still at the gym, like that alarm clock went off at 4:20 a.m. I'm hurting a little bit, but then it's you get moving, right? That body in motion.
Yeah.
You start working on the footwork, then you start working on your defense, parry and block and making sure you're sound. And then you start throwing those punches. And you start hearing it hit the bag and hit the mitts, and you're like, I'm supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be here preparing for this opportunity that's going to present itself September 25th. But even more importantly, I think the opportunities that's going to present itself after um, that opportunity are going to continue to grow and give me a platform to do some really good things. And I'm very uh, maybe delusional or realistic or whatever you want to say. I have a very strong belief that I'm going to be in the UFC and I'm going to be prepared to be in the UFC. And I'm going to compete very well in the UFC. And I'm going to look to dominate the UFC and win a UFC gold before that clock runs out. Because we don't know when that clock runs out. I didn't think my career was going to be over and my wrestling career was going to be over in 2022. And now here I am, fighting 4 years later. I think with a very real opportunity to have the opportunity with a real opportunity to have the ability to showcase my skills and build on those skills and go perform in the biggest MMA organization in the world, which is the Ultimate Fighting Championship. So that's on my bucket list, but it's not just to perform; it's to show up, dominate, and really make things happen.
I believe you. I mean, watching your fights, you have magic there. There is something there, and immediately I said, okay. There was two things I said. I said, man, he reminds me of a lot of Cormier. And the second, I was like, listen, he's got it. You know. I have a little bit of a technical question here, which is quite interesting to a lot of people who are doing MMA type of grappling and wrestling, which is basically wall wrestling versus mat wrestling. When working from a clinch against a cage, how do you manipulate your opponent's center of gravity differently than you would in the center of an open wrestling mat?
Well, I would say it has a lot to do with where you're applying the pressure. Are you getting somebody to think about their feet and then shifting, like around their body? Or are you getting them thinking
Yeah,
about their body or their chin because you're throwing, shoulder punches? Um, and there's that threat of that's getting them to just move, or all you need is, like this little opening for those things to happen. So I think it has a lot to do with pressure and balance. And right. I think because I have, 25 plus years of experience grappling, I
yeah,
think I feel pressure and balance a lot better maybe than some people have if they have a shorter time frame. And that's something I want to continue to exploit. But the wall wrestling, it's fun. Like as a kid in the room, like you would scrap off the wall, but I don't think we had the awareness of like how MMA was going to, or what MMA was going to become at that point. And so I don't think the technical nuance was all the way there. But now you're getting better athletes. You got football players transitioning to mixed martial arts. You got
yeah.
basketball players. You got soccer. Like people that are athletic and maybe better athletes than you may have competed against in wrestling are transitioning and bringing that athleticism, that
Yeah.
the range, the length, into the space. And so it forces you to still be very intelligent about how you're going about things, because if you don't do it appropriately, it can easily be a short night.
Absolutely. In the end of the day, I agree with you. Not the end of the day, I do agree with you. But in the end of the day, the brain controls the body. Okay.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that elite wrestling has is chain wrestling. We know this. So, and that said, elite wrestling is all about chaining attacks. How are you currently developing the neurological pathways to chain your strikes directly into your takedowns without telegraphing the level change?
I think it's just drilling. It's drilling consistently, but it's drilling when fatigued, drilling when tired, and being very intentional about how we're drilling. Like I go see Durant. He's like, bend your knees. And he's like, "Oh, you just been getting away with this because you're just a better wrestler." And he's like, Like, and we had just that Monday. So this is a Saturday. Just that Monday, my head coach Jerome Ward was on me about it, and then I heard it again, and I know Jerome and Duran didn't talk, you know, and so it was like, hey, this is you didn't heard it twice now. You need to hone in on that. You need to detail that, and make sure you're being effective and being focused in how you're drilling, how you're positioning yourself. Because I think at times it can be easy because of the background to get away with some things that you wouldn't get away with against the elite caliber, the top 10 guys in the world at the weight
Yeah.
class. And so just honing in on those details, and having the people that will hold you accountable to the standard, um, is more than amazing.
I think you're spot on. Um, you obviously now train submission wrestling as well, on top of MMA. How is immersing yourself in a room, no, like around fighters known for aggressive, submission-oriented jiu-jitsu, challenged you deeply in terms of your ingrained wrestling instincts regarding bottom positioning, back exposure? Are you used to it yet, or is you still? Um, I mean, you have 25 years of developing those instincts. Do you find it's a little bit hard to get out as a wrestler?
Well, if I'm on my back, something's bad. Now we'll do things and start there. But like in MMA, the sport is built off top position. You
Yeah.
want to be in top position. Top position is king. And we've learned to do a few, different things off our back, but that is not a place that I want to get comfortable at whatsoever. Um, whether it's jujitsu, MMA, wrestling, uh, I mean, I don't think it's yeah, we don't really want to be on our back. There's no other way to put that, Um and if I was a married man, I'd be like, "Hey, honey, like like uh nah, this doesn't feel right for me. Like the back doesn't feel right for me, So just figuring out
Once a
those.
wrestler, always a wrestler, buddy.
It is
You
what it is.
know,
Hard,
like
hard, hard to leave that. And so, yeah, man, just trying to be intelligent about it. But like, again, when fatigued, overloaded, overwhelmed, putting yourself in position like, all right, you're down. Now you got to get up. And the thing is, if you're intelligent or you're wise, in my opinion, younger Bastida is still in Iowa State training. So I don't have to go far to go find someone that can go get a takedown, and put in effort, So
yeah.
it's like when we're in camp and we're doing shark bait, like, and you got guys switching on you, you make some calls and bring some people in that, aren't going to take a back seat to you and are wired the same way you're wired, so that you give yourself the best opportunity to show up and perform at an elite level with some consistency when it's fight night.
Yeah, and I mean, being in the area you are, I mean, to find and with your connections to find good training partners to get you to develop those attributes needed for each different fight, it's such a good position to be in. One of the things for wrestlers, and anyway, anyone I think is kind of defending the lower half, and because in MMA, checking leg kicks and defending the lower body is paramount. Okay, how
Yes.
was your how has now as a wrestler it becomes problematic because in wrestling we're always taught to have heavy feet, right? In the end of the day you want to be quick, but you need to have that base. So how has your stance evolved to protect your lead leg while still maintaining the explosive capability to shoot or close the distance? Because this is, I think, one of the hardest things for wrestlers.
I think it's gotten really good, but we've spent, the last, maybe really good is a stretch, but we spent the last 4 years on footwork, and so just being able to move through space, get in, get out, left, right, pivot, roll, slip. Like we spent time doing that, and so I think it's gotten. Um, I know for sure it's gotten a lot better than where we were at. But I think I always move decently light on my feet. Now I'm carrying a little bit more weight, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. But um we've gotten, I think, pretty good at being able to move, like on the balls of our feet, and get out of space, find space, close distance. So I'm pretty proud of the of what we've done in that, I would say, short time frame. And I can see that it'll get better the more we continue, on that path.
You know, you have, I don't know how to call it. I would maybe let's call it the ice cream mentality. It's a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Your famous "I just want ice cream" quote, okay,
Right.
which was just lovely to see after you won. I mean, honestly, if
Yeah.
there was a pure moment, that was it. It showed a remarkably grounded, yeah, there you go. I just want some ice cream, man. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it showed a it showed a remarkably grounded mindset after achieving the pinnacle of college wrestling. How important is it to maintain that sense of levity and calm when competing in professional cage fighting?
Oh, man, I would say it's in one way it's I think I'm using this correctly. It's like paramount, like it's
Yeah.
imperative, like that you keep the peace amongst the chaos, because it does get chaotic in there. And if you start getting antsy, or telegraphic with your actions, the best
Mhm.
guys in the world are going to see that, and they're going to exploit it, because that's what they've learned to do and they've been taught to do. And so I try to do a really good job of just being as even as you need to, and knowing when to explode and when to pull back slow, like being able to move through those, because these are 5 minute rounds. A wrestling match is, 7 minutes. Uh, and so now you're in a 15-minute bout. And so you have to know when to go, and you and when to break, and when to accelerate. And so I think I've done a solid job of um, analyzing and knowing, how to move through, those situations. Um, but I think one of the biggest things for me has just been a elite level sense of gratitude, to just be able to make the walk.
Yeah.
Like each time I get to make the walk, I'm like, man, I'm grateful that I can do this, because 2020, I'm feeling the best I've ever felt. Coming off a win over Kyle Snyder at the U.S. Senior Nationals, and then the next month, and that's going into the Olympic trials. So I'm like, we beat them, and we're like, oh, okay, like we figured it out now. We figured out the puzzle a little bit, and then the next month, I tear my groin off the bone, right? And so then leading up to Olympic trials, you only
Damn.
you're like 4 months out, but you can't really train. Like you're getting you're flying out to the Stedman Philippon clinic, and you're getting the PRP shots. But also during that time, you're going through some family stressors that are shifting, like your fast and your biology. Like your cortisol levels are shot through the roof. Not just because of this injury, but because of the uncertainty, and so um,
Yeah.
all those things, I think, have led me to find a certain level of maybe comfort in the chaos, and I try to do a good job taking that into that mind frame into the cage.
You know, looking at your journey from Iowa State champion to Final X freestyle competitor, and now undefeated pro MMA fighter. What is the single most profound lesson grappling has taught you about your own physical and, more importantly, mental resilience?
What is the most profound lesson? Um, that that's a really good question. What is the most profound lesson? Well, in one way, it's like butt whippings are free from Coach Willie Gadson, but like it's I think it's just taught you that like in life you can do all that you're supposed to do. You can turn over all the stones. You can prepare with diligence, and be at peace. And the outcome isn't necessarily yours to make. And so just being at peace with the energy, effort, the work that you're going to put in, and finding joy in the journey, I think is extremely important. And I would say that's probably high up there. It's just like do everything that you're capable and willing to do to create the life that you enjoy living. Um, and then let the outcome be what the outcome is, and kind of releasing that, um, but controlling what you can control in the space, being thoughtful, intelligent, hardworking, um, having the ability to listen. Those are like character traits that I would want for the athletes that I'm going to coach. Be a person of your word, like just
Yeah.
good things that you want people to do as like humans, you want them to do as athletes. Um, and like in a competition, um, I think some of the maybe some of the nastier traits, like the narcissism, manipulation, like your dominance, control over somebody, they have to be there to exceed at
For
this
sure.
level of competition. um but I think those things are important too. But knowing how to separate them, like everyone, you talk about people being able to separate the two. Like Brian Dawkins, Weapon X, right? You got Brian Dawkins, Weapon X. You got um, Kobe Bryant. You got the Black Mamba.
Oh yeah.
And for myself, like there's Kyven, and then there's Showtime. And they're similar people, but I think Showtime is more, he has more bravado. He definitely is over on the line of confidence, arrogance, um maybe intelligent arrogance, whereas Kyvan's a little bit milder. He kind of cares how people feel about him, versus like Showtime shows up and he's here to put on a show, a performance, and prepare to put on that performance, and that can come at the cost. Um, that comes at the cost of other people's dreams. Like I got to deny your dreams so that mine don't become denied, And so just being comfortable and okay doing that.
In a way, I mean, you wear glasses. It's almost as you go into the cage like Superman. You take off
Yeah.
the glasses and it's go time. It's
Yeah.
go time,
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
Like it's like that. I'm sure for the audience, I would definitely watch Kyven's MMA fights. But before you watch his MMA fights, you have to watch the finals of the NCAA tournament where he beats Snyder, and you got to watch it with that famous comment, which I'm going to ask you. After that tournament, you said you just want some ice cream. What was the flavor of ice cream?
So I had no idea how that all was going to play out, but um, I got a bowl at our like team outing, which was vanilla. And then the day after, was able to kind of unleash, cause I cut from 245 to 197. So I'd be 245 in like July, and then I would shrink myself down,
Oh,
to make 197. And so I was always like a
That's a lot.
bigger 197 pounder. And I carry about 30 pounds more than that now. And I'm looking forward to leaning that out. But I got that ice cream, but now I have my own ice cream flavor, which is championship Kyven dough, at the Iowa State Creamery.
Oh,
And that's dulce de leche flavored ice cream with cookie dough, caramel, and then chocolate chip. So emphasis on the chip, championship. And so I mean, when you talk about like everyone knows
by
like
the way,
their
that
career,
sounds really good.
it's so good. Like when you talk about like a MMA or a sports career, um, that has a finite amount of time, right? Like I'm 34 years old. That's no secret. They're the Daniel fought till he was 41, but he was elite. Jan Blachowicz just fought at 43. But like I don't want to stay in over overstay my time, and so if I'm looking at it from an
Yeah.
elite perspective, um, I have in a really solid world, I probably have 4 years left. In a perfect world, I have 6 or 7 years left. You know, to
Yeah.
capitalize and um, maximize this opportunity to compete and perform at this level and on this platform. And then the thing is like, how do you pivot? Like, do I get an ice cream shop? Do I have a restaurant called Showtimes, like a fine dining club or something? Do I go into speaking engagements, um, or motivational speaking? Like, what's the pivot? And so, or do I end up on the show Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone because it's on Paramount Plus
Oh,
too, and he just talked about moving their product to the state of Iowa. So Sylvester Stallone, if you hear this, like put me on Tulsa King. I'll be prepared. But you just want to maximize the opportunity and the platform through the preparation because the time is limited.
well, I'm going to add for Stallone. Stallone, if you are listening to this, can you subscribe? Because that would be the coolest thing on earth to have Sylvester Stallone as a subscriber. But listen, what you said is actually one of the most real things as an athlete, especially going into older age, is you understand that it's finite, right? And you understand that life continues after, and the journey, as we spoke before, from Iowa State champion to the freestyle competitor to the MMA fighter, it needs to continue after. So I think you definitely hit a great point. I definitely have to say I have to try your ice cream. That really does sound good.
Do you
Um,
ever make it over to the
listen, Kai,
states? Do you ever make it over to the
I was
states?
supposed to, okay, I was supposed to come to California this summer, but I have some really bad problems. I'm actually have my brain is bleeding so a little bit, so I'm getting these strokes. It's
Oh
okay.
no.
We all have a yeah. I had a heart issue and my aorta blew, and basic because of that, all my arteries are having problems since then a year and a half ago. But thank God I know it. Thank God I'm 47 and I know it. I'm not, for example, 70. When I was sitting there with 70-year-olds who I wondered how did they recover. So I say thank you, God. And I really learned a lot from it. And I learned from it every day, and I appreciate everything that God's given me because of that. But if I ever get to the States and if I ever get to the Midwest, I will definitely be hitting that ice cream, and I'll give you an honest opinion.
Oh,
Okay, I'm not
100%.
going to be like, "Hey, man, this is good," which I suspected is going to be good because when you said dulce de leche, I was
Yeah.
already in there. I was like, and cookie dough. I was like, man, you know.
Now what I need is some big brand to come
So
to come partner with me. Cause like this all came the flavor, everything came from my mind. The name, all of it. And so I think there's some really good things happening up here. Now it's about just getting them out there and executing on them and bringing those things to life, through faith, hope, and just extremely hard work, and a belief that, these things are supposed to happen for you, in a emphatic and amazing way.
Yeah, I agree. I think being thankful and grounded and humble. And the one thing I'm noticing about you, which is why I'm saying I really think you have a huge future in MMA, other than watching the fights where you dominate, but is the fact that you're coming there still as the student. And that's a very important thing to do. And your humbleness is definitely apparent. And I think when you get to that level, uh, once a fighter stops being humble and they think they're the know-it-all, etc., the end, and they are the alpha and the omega of fighting knowledge, then someone else who has really good coaches around them will be taking that advice and will usually dominate.
Yeah.
So, Kyvan, what do you want to tell the audience about yourself? Like before we end, like what do you have going on? Like,
Well, Myriad MMA Academy in Ames, Iowa is going to be a combat sports hub. Our gym is coming together, and I'm really excited about that. Uh, Personally, like I would love for people to tune in, and just watch it happen. You can follow us on at Myriad.
yeah,
You type in Myriad Ames or Myriad MMA Academy will pop up. But also just checking me out at Gadson Strong all platforms, TikTok, Instagram, and then Kyven Gadson on Facebook, but YouTube also Gadson Strong. Just yeah, follow along, check it out. I just had a collaboration with the college wrestling game, talking about like the letter that I wrote myself um, before the NCAA tournament my senior year. I believe in writing. Like that's what this notebook is full of, is just just writing. And so all that. Uh, but I think some really like you kind of said, like some really positive things are going to happen, and I think they're going to happen pretty quickly here, especially if I go do what I'm trained to do and go execute appropriately and efficiently on September 25th, down at Fighting Alliance Championships in Kansas City. I think we're gonna really put ourselves in a really really good position to go continue creating a life that I enjoy living, and with consistency over the course of the next, you know, day to, 7, 10 years. Some really, really amazing things will be happening. And then maybe I can live summer every day like my daughter wants to. So,
Kevin, you were just a gem of a guest, of a human being. Um, because before being a fighter and after being a fighter, we're all humans in the end. And I definitely can say it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you and having you on the podcast. I can say to the audience, definitely Kyvan is the one guy you want to keep on your radar. I'm telling you, he is he is a big problem. Okay, if you're in MMA, he's a problem. Okay, and he's an intelligent problem. And yeah, usually guys who are problems, they go very far. You know, and also regarding Grapplezilla podcast, if you can like, subscribe, comment, even if it's good, bad, whatever, just get the conversation going. I'm all about that. Also, I have a shop if you'd like to buy some t-shirts. I have. It always helps to support us. And I'm going to put everything about Kevin's socials, etc., and where to find him and what he's got going on. And I highly recommend following his channels. They're really good. And if you ever have a chance to train with Kevin or learn from Kevin or just to meet him, I highly recommend it because he is at the pinnacle of this sport. Kyvan, thank you so much. And I'm so sorry for saying Kevin so much. I'm like I said, I have an IQ of a mushroom, so apologize ahead of time. Uh, Kyvan, thank you very much for coming on to the Grapplezilla podcast, buddy.
no, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about a sport that I'm growing into love with, and a sport that I've loved, like my whole life. And so uh, I'm excited. for people to hear this episode, and really appreciative. Shout out to San Antonio's Catch Wrestling for putting us in contact together, and giving me this opportunity. So thank you, Josh.
Amen. Well, thank you, Kyven. And listen, until next time, guys, grab, throw, and tap. And most importantly, have a very good day.